In this video, I'm going to fully explain the CAGED system and show you how to use it for rhythm guitar and lead guitar. Let's start with what it is, because this is one of the most misunderstood things in all of guitar playing. All the CAGED system is a map on the fretboard that shows you a bunch of different ways to play the same chord. This works because there's a difference between a chord and a chord shape. Let me explain. So when you're first starting out, you're probably just thinking of chords as those painful, pretty sounding hand twisters that you put up with so you can learn the instrument and get a girlfriend. But if you really want to get technical, there's two elements. The chord, which is a group of notes, and the chord shape, which is something your hand does. For example, here we have a C chord. This is a C chord because I'm simultaneously playing the notes C, E, and G. A C chord shape is a slightly different thing that really doesn't have anything to do with notes. It has everything to do with the position that I'm holding my hand in. Notice that if I keep my hand in this exact same position, the same shape you might call it, I move it up a couple of frets and I slap on a capo, then the same exact shape yields an entirely different chord. In this case, that was a D chord. And just to hammer home the concept of a shape, we could change the fingering if we wanted to. I could ditch the capo if I felt like it and play the whole thing as a bar chord. And if you don't know what a bar chord is, check out this other video that I made and then come back to this one. I think that'll help a lot of stuff in this video sort of click a little bit better. But anyway, like I was saying, we could play it as a bar chord, we could play it with a capo, we could play it with our feet. So long as this configuration of notes is getting played, then it's a C shape. And we call this a C shape because obviously its most common use is to play a C chord, but as I just showed you, it can be moved all around to play a lot of different chords. All the CAGED system does is flip this idea, so that instead of playing a lot of different chords using the same shape, we're going to play the same chord using a lot of different shapes. Let me show you. So in this example, I'm going to show you how to play 5 different versions of a C major chord. Like I mentioned before, a C chord is made up of the notes C, E, and G. And if we map those notes all across the fretboard, you'll start to notice some interesting patterns. The first one is pretty obvious, and that's that in the open position, a C shape plays the C chord. That's not groundbreaking. What's a little more interesting is that right above it, you'll notice a shape that looks an awful lot like an A major chord. This is an A major shape being used to play a C chord. It's one of those bar chords that we mentioned before. You can tell that the fingering's been changed around, but the A shape is still intact. And just to be super clear, it's an A shape because of the configuration of notes, but it's a C chord because of the notes themselves, the notes that are actually coming out of the guitar. Above that A shape, you'll notice a G shape. And unless you have freakish shack-sized hands, you're only going to be able to do what I'm doing right now and play this as a partial G shape. And that's okay. With the CAGED system, it's more important to see the shapes than it is to literally play every note. Like I mentioned before, the CAGED system is a map, and just like a regular map, it's way more important to see the pathways and destinations than it is to literally drive down every street like a psycho. As I say that, I realize that the website that gives my life meaning, YouTube, is owned by Google, a company known for driving down every street. I want to apologize to my corporate overlords and clarify that driving down every street on the planet is something that any healthy, well-adjusted person would want to do. Moving on, above the G shape, you'll notice an E shape. Again, the arrangement of notes is modeled after an E major open chord, but the notes that are actually coming out of the guitar are playing a C chord. And finally, above the E shape, you'll notice a D shape. And after the D shape, it just repeats again with a C shape. So just to recap, let's play through the entire CAGED system. Everything we're about to play is going to be a C major chord. Starts off with a C shape. Then goes to an A shape. Then to a G shape. Then to an E shape, then to a D shape, then starts again with a C shape. And by the way, this order of shapes, C, A, G, E, D, is where the CAGED system gets its name. And you don't even have to screenshot because in the description I'm going to include a link to a chart of the CAGED system. So that's the CAGED system, that's it. Really quick, a couple of important things to point out. In our example, we use the system to play several versions of a C major chord. You could pick any major chord you like. Let's say you started with G, for example. So long as you kept the order C, A, G, E, D repeating, you'd be fine. So because you started on G, you would go right to an E shape, and then a D shape, then you'd start over with a C shape, so on and so forth. And to be clear, you don't even have to pick a chord that is C, A, G, E, or D. You could pick like B major, for example. B major doesn't exist as an open chord, but the same principles would apply. So let's say you played your B major chord as an A shape to begin with. Then you could go right to a G shape, still a B major chord. You could go to an E shape, still a B major chord, so on and so forth. So that's how you understand the map that is the CAGED system, but how do you use it? Well, for rhythm, it's pretty straightforward. I've been saying this whole time that you can play different versions of the same chord, which is really useful when you're trying to take a boring chord progression, make it more interesting. We've all been in that situation where you're playing a rhythm part that's made up of simple open chords, and it sounds good, but over the course of a whole song, it gets pretty repetitive. Let me show you how the CAGED system solves this. So let's take a really standard chord progression, G to C to D. Hey you guys, editing Kevin from the future here. On camera, Kevin was having a really hard time playing and talking at the same time, so I'm gonna narrate this next section of the video. Before I hit play and start explaining stuff, I wanna encourage you guys to slow down and pause this section of the video and kind of look for the stuff that I'm pointing out. Normally I would pause the video for you, but part of the point I'm trying to make here is that even as we change all the shapes around, the chord progression still kind of feels right, but if I start and stop the video a lot, it kind of gets really choppy and loses its musical integrity. Let's get into it. Okay, so like I said before, the progression is G to C to D and back to G. All right, that's G as an E shape, C as a G shape, D as an A shape, and G as a G shape again. That's G as a D shape, C as a D shape, and D as a D shape. I wanted to show you that you can play them all as the same shape if you want to. And we're back to G as a G shape. So you could see in every example there, it was still the chords G, C, and D, but by using the CAGED shapes, we were able to get different flavors out of the same chords. So that's how you use the CAGED system for rhythm guitar, but what about lead? Well, there's a lot of applications to lead guitar. Some people like to use the CAGED system to locate pentatonic positions. Some people like to use the system to play arpeggios. But I think the one concept that sort of ties all these together is called chord tone soloing. Chord tone soloing is a technique where when you're soloing, you try to include some of the notes that make up the chords that are happening behind you. So let's say you're soloing and behind you the band is playing a C chord. You would try to weave in the notes C, E, and G because those notes make up a C chord. And then when the band moves to a new chord, you would start emphasizing new notes to match the new chord. The CAGED system makes this easy because, like we've been saying, it's just a map of all the chord notes or the chord tones across the entire fretboard. And by the way, the reason you would use this technique is to make your solo feel like it really fits with the song because you are literally sharing notes between the solo and the chords. I'm going to show you guys an example of this in the key of C major, but before we do that, I just want to emphasize that this is a surface level introduction to this concept and that we can and will expand on these ideas in future videos. Okay, so like I said, our example is going to be in the key of C major. Our chords are going to be C and F. And because I'm a stereotypical guitarist, in the key of C major, I'm going to be ripping the A minor pentatonic scale. Okay, so before we get started, let's just take a second to think. We know that one of the chords is going to be C. And we know that we're going to be playing here at the 5th fret in the A minor pentatonic scale. Let's try to think of a CAGED shape that makes C as a chord available to us here around the 5th fret. If you got the CAGED system down, you should be able to see that a G shape makes C as a chord available to us here in the middle of the neck. If we do the same thing for our other chord F, we should see that a C shape makes F available to us right here in the middle of the neck. When you're soloing, you're going to want to target those notes when that chord comes around. And really quick, I want to point out that when we're looking at this F chord as a C shape here, these two notes, this one and this one, same note by the way, just octaves of each other, those are outside of the A minor pentatonic scale. That's okay, you're still allowed to play those notes, and in fact, because they're outside the pentatonic scale like that, they're probably really good notes to play. I'm going to start by just looping our chords C and F. Okay, now I'm going to throw in a little distortion just so you can kind of hear the lead guitar differentiated from the rhythm guitar. And you're going to see that I'm going to target those chord tones that we were talking about before. See, it doesn't have to be super complicated. It can just be really simple. All I'm trying to get you to do is start thinking about, if I'm playing a scale in, whatever position, what CAGED shapes are nearby so that I can target those chord tones. So that's it, guys. That's the CAGED system, what it is, how it works, and how to use it. If you want that chart I made that shows the entire CAGED system across the fretboard, check out the link in the description. And before I end this video, I want to say a huge thank you to Dylan Bates, who runs the YouTube channel Dylan Bates, The Final Cut Bro. You guys probably noticed the dots on the fretboard in this video. That is it's a video editing effect, and it's kind of hard. I didn't know how to do it, and Dylan was really helpful in showing me what I needed to do to get it done. If you guys are interested in video editing with Final Cut Pro and Apple Motion, I can't recommend enough Dylan's channel. He's who I follow, and again, just thank you so much to Dylan. And while we're talking about the dots on the fretboard, that effect, let me know what you guys think of that. It's a really labor-intensive, time-consuming effect, but I really like it. I actually think it's a little more natural to kind of figure out what I'm playing than even tabs or something like that. But it's not for me, it's for you guys, so let me know what you guys think. And as always, thank you for watching.